What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Godzilla Kong the New Empire Playmates review. We are of course continuing our giant figures review. Now obviously, just 2 days ago I put out the Giant Godzilla Evolved review, and needless to say, I was very pleased with that figure. And I hope I can continue that with the second giant figure that we'll be looking at today. This is, of course, Giant Kong with the B.E.A.S.T glove. Now, this was definitely an intriguing one. When I first learned that Playmates was going to make more figures for the new movie, this was one of the first figures I saw as a glam shot. I am also looking forward to this because this looks nothing like the original Giant Kong that we first got in Godzilla vs. Kong. So, just like Godzilla, this is a completely new mold. It's not a recolor, a completely new Kong figure. And so I anticipate to see a proper comparison between the two. And, of course, this is a scaled up version of the 6-inch Kong with B.E.A.S.T glove. And I obviously did the review that already. But if you want the bigger version, this is basically the bigger version of that 6-inch figure. First and foremost, the packaging, of course. This is in an open box concept. Very nice. You see the figure in full. We have, of course, the official renders of Kong and Godzilla there. And we have Giant Kong with the B.E.A.S.T glove on the side. And of course, here is one side of the box, and here is the other side with the French. And of course, the bottom, if you really want to see what's on the bottom, let me show you. It's just your other bits of information, so you may pause the video to read all that bit of information. And of course, next to it, we have Giant Godzilla and Giant Scar King to advertise it. Now, here is the back. We have just a very nice rendered photo of Kong there. Now, traditionally, the other packages would just have a list of all the other figures that Playmates is selling. Well, for the giant figures case, I guess because they did it at the bottom already, they just have a giant render of the figure at the back over the big Kong font there, which is pretty nice. I think it's a simple, clean packaging. It keeps it very minimal. It's not like just filled with a list of a bunch of other figures, so I think this is a better approach to keeping this packaging nice, but also minimum because, of course, we're here for the figure within. So, let's do exactly that. Let's open this package and take out the figure within. Alright, the figure is out of the package, and I am very impressed. I think this definitely has been one of the strongest Kong figures we've gotten from Playmates. And I can easily say it's a major step up from the original Giant Kong from Godzilla vs. Kong. In fact, I have it right here. Let's do that comparison right now. Look at the difference. It's like they're not even the same character. The difference could not be more obvious. Not just in the body, but articulation and the visual appearance as well. So let me recap the old one. Of course, I did this review 3 years ago, so some time has definitely passed. So the old Kong here, the articulation is very limited. You would expect for a giant figure, Playmates would have more leeway to make more articulation because of the bigger budget and ultimately the bigger size. Unfortunately, no, that did not happen. The articulation is limited to only the arms, which of course can be moved up and down, but no elbow movement. You can only just move the good old arms, the entire arm, that's about it. You can't move it quite high though. There is good articulation in terms of how far you can take it, But unfortunately, you're limited to the poses because you can only just move it front and back. Next up, you got the wrists articulation. As you can see, you can just twist it and that's about it. And there is no battle axe that was included with this one, despite having an open hand right here. But you can twist his hands and I guess that's okay. But the legs really suffered the articulation. You can only, not even front and back, it's on an angle, so it's kind of an awkward articulation point here as well, but at least you can kind of swivel the feet, which is pretty solid in my opinion. But now that we've seen the new figure, I definitely think the articulation on this one is very lacking. Can I move the head? Sort of, you can sort of move the head, but it's very tight and I wouldn't recommend trying to put a lot of force into it. So overall, this figure isn't terrible, but it is quite underwhelming, especially now that I realize the articulation potential that Kong actually has. And Playmates has definitely improved. I guess they evaluated this figure and they're like, yeah, we could do better. And they pulled up with this one. Now, as I mentioned, this is a scaled up version of the 6-inch one. So here is the 6-inch one. In fact, it looks almost identical, which is why this one was the perfect one to do the comparison. They have similar colors, except I will say the giant one here is slightly lighter. And we have a darker gray color scheme with the 6-inch one here. But ultimately, it's the same face, it's the same articulation points, and the Infinity Gauntlet, I mean the Beast Glove, is pretty much the same. But of course, being the bigger figure, it has more space for the Beast Glove to be more detailed. And you will notice for the Beast Glove, I'm not so sure how well the camera picks it up, but the yellow is definitely a lot more yellow on this one. This one's like a lighter tone of yellow. This one is like yellow. It's very obvious. Like this is more camo yellow. This is yellow, if that makes any sense. From the two of them, obviously I would say go for the bigger one, but obviously there's the big money factor. This 6-inch one is, of course, going to be cheaper. But so far, from all the stores I've been to, I've only been seeing the giant one, so there may not be a lot of options, but the giant one is 40 Canadian dollars and the 6-inch one here is only 13 Canadian dollars. So how much money are you willing to spend? That is up to you. But as you can see, the value of each figure definitely has their pros and cons. So that is the main comparison I really want to do, just to show you that, yeah, this is pretty much the same figure, just scaled up. What I love about the big fig here is that even though it's a scaled up version of the 6-inch, it still has the articulation that the 6-inch had. And that is fantastic. And of course, it is significantly improved from the old Giant Kong. So let's take a look, shall we? First and foremost, the arms. Now, the biggest difference of this Kong compared to previous Kongs is the Beast Glove. So with the 6-inch, the articulation was actually limited on the Beast Glove side, which makes sense because the Beast Glove is like a whole new mold attached to it. So I guess it made sense. They had to sacrifice wrist articulation on the Beast Glove for it to actually, look decent. But that doesn't mean you can't move the entire arm, it's just the wrist. So there is still your good old articulation. You can move forward and back just like the old one, but as you just saw me do, you can open it up, you can lift it up and down. This looks great. Of course, if you want him to do the signature Beast Glove punch, there you go, you can lift his arm up like that. That is fantastic. And of course, you can twist his arm like that. It looks great. There is already lots of flexibility here. And you can move the elbow as well. So if you want him to wind up a punch to punch with the Beast Glove, there you go. You can fold his elbows in. But that's as far as you can go because this is completely straight. And this is where you can take it all the way up to. And that's about it. But that's okay. You also can't move the wrist, as I already mentioned. And you can see there's like the gear in place of the Beast Glove, so that's somewhat limits the articulation, but I personally think it's okay. Like, it's limited, but it doesn't really affect the overall articulation as a whole. Now for the other arm, of course, this arm does not have the Beast Glove. This is just the regular arm. So you have your same forward and back articulation, and you can also open it up. You can also lift his arm. I don't know why, but this side is a much tighter joint. Probably gonna have to actually meddle with it quite a bit for it to warm up. But you can do it, it's just pretty tight. And of course, you can fold in the elbows as well. You can move it all the way out like this, perfectly straight arm, or you can fold it all the way in. That's as far as you can take it. That's good enough. And this, of course, this side, you can move the wrists, you can twist the wrists, and move the hand as a whole compared to the B.E.A.S.T glove arm. So this is the same thing as the 6-inch. The 6-inch one, you also cannot move the B.E.A.S.T glove hand. Another big improvement is the leg articulation. As you just saw with the old Giant Kong, the leg articulation was severely lacking. Here you have 2 points of articulation as well, but it is 2 good points of articulation. Now, one thing that they sacrificed with the new legs here is the ankle movement. The old one, you can swivel the feet, you can twist the ankles, you can twist the feet, call it what you will, but you can't do that here. It is one mold and you cannot twist the feet, which is okay because the rest of the legs is articulable. So, of course, you can move his legs forward, really just forward. You can't really move it back. His butt is kind of holding the legs in place from moving backwards, so you can't really do that. Goddamn butt cheeks. But you can move the legs. You can see you can fold the legs in. If you want them to be sitting, it's not 100% perfect, but it does get the job done. And it's already a great thing that there is articulation here. Look at that. You can move his knees forward and back. That is good. I personally think I'd rather get this type of articulation and not have the feet movement. Honestly, I don't think a lot of people are going to care about his feet being able to move or not. So you should just focus on the legs as a whole, and that's exactly what they did here. And it worked out perfectly. Now the last bit of articulation, I'm not even sure if they have it. Oh, they do have it. It's of course the head. You can somewhat twist him left and right. It is kind of on a ball socket. As you can see, you can sort of move it out a little bit, but it's not too much. But mostly you can just left and right. That's about it. Left and right. You can have him shake his head just like that. So I personally think it's a pretty solid articulation based figure because this gives something that the old Kong couldn't: playability. I am picturing a kid sitting down in the living room playing with this Kong, and I think he/she will have so much fun with it. The articulation can strike up so many different poses, and of course it will look great on display if you're not playing with it. You know, putting him on the shelf, put him in a pose you like on the shelf, and it will look fantastic. Now, articulation aside, how does he look though? I mean, he is basically the same as the 6-inch. It's, as I said, a scaled up version of the 6-inch. But is it better? Well, I think it's just about the same. They're able to highlight the textures pretty well. And of course, the color, as I showed you earlier, is a lot lighter than the 6-inch. It's the same color scheme, but it is lighter. Now, unfortunately, one big flaw when it comes to the giant figures, and it looks like this new Kong, despite it being an upgrade, still fell victim to the screw holes. The old Kong had screw holes too, but it was all at the back, just like this one. And what's even funnier is there's a screw hole right above his butt cheeks. Damn, you really had to put a screw hole there, didn't you? At the knees as well, as you can see. So there's way more screw holes with this one compared to the old Kong. At least it's not as bad as Godzilla, because Godzilla's screw holes are on one side, whereas Kong's here is just all on his back. So as long as you display him facing forward, you won't really see those screw holes ever, and it's there, and it sucks, but there's no way around it. I do wish they could probably paint the fur the same color so it can somewhat camouflage the screw holes. It just looks like he's getting needles pecked from the back, and it just doesn't look pleasant. And obviously the 6-inch one doesn't have that. You can see there's not a single screw hole in sight, which would have been nice for the big one as well, but I guess not. That's also a problem that Godzilla had, this new Godzilla, and the older giant figures too. At least for Mecha Godzilla's case, it was somewhat okay because of his robotic gray nature, so the screw hole's kind of camouflaged and it's not really that noticeable. But for figures like Godzilla and Kong here, especially Kong here, you can still see it. But the rest of the figure looks great as a whole. You can see the textures of the fur pretty nice. It is more smoother, though, I will say, compared to the 6-inch one, which had a lot more rough texture. It's like a rough fur texture. The giant one here definitely has a more glossier, smoother texture going on. So I think it's more clean in a way. And of course, it's a lighter shade of gray compared to the 6-inch, which had a darker shade of gray. Now, a little bit of contrast, you can see there's little bits of light gray at the toes, and of course at the fingertips as well, and most obviously up to his chest where you can see his six-pack. And you can also see that there's claw marks, or scratch marks, call it what you will, but it looks like he's gotten more this time. And yes, it's the same pattern as the 6-inch. And I like that little attention to detail, and the fact that there's gray fading out is a good contrast. I think that's a good way to make the figure not feel bland. You know, it gives them a bit of contrasting, really helps makes the colors stand out. Now the biggest contrast, of course, is with the Beast glove when it's all light yellow. A little bit of the yellow though did get on the shoulder here, and that might have been a misprint. That's funny, a little bit of yellow paint got on here. Oh well. But the Beast glove itself is pretty well detailed. I do like the gear thing they have here for the joints. You know, at least it makes sense. You can articulate the glove well. I just love how it wraps around his arm like this. And you can also see the letters and numbers on the Infinity Gauntlet. I can't believe I just said that, but yes, we'll just call it the Infinity Gauntlet. There's numbers and letters on it. And with the giant one here, because it is a giant figure, it is more clear. You can see the font more clearly. I think it's the same as the 6-inch. I mean, not that the 6-inch one wasn't clear to begin with, but it's more clear with the giant one here. The last bit of detail comes with his face. Now, it is the same roaring face as you'll get from the 6-inch. You can see he also has a big bushy beard. He has a pretty big mouth too. And you can see inside it's a pretty good paint as well. The eyes are very expressive. You know, this is a very expressive looking face. It does show like Kong is furious, he's angry, and is ready to go into battle. I do like that because the old Kong, it just looks like he's growling, smirking in a way. This Kong really looks like he is ready to get into a fight with another opponent. So I like what they've done to the face here. It's very well done, very well molded as well. And most importantly, the fur has a bit of contrast. As you can see, there's like a fold here, kind of like his cheeks. You know, they still maintain the texture pretty well. I just like how when it folds, they don't sacrifice the fur there. It doesn't just have this weird smooth bit. There's still fur. So I think they've done a pretty good job with the texture and just the overall appearance of this giant Kong as a whole. Is it a big improvement from the old one? Without a doubt, 100%. The articulation is the biggest thing that has made this figure so much better. I will say I much prefer the lighter tone here compared to the darker tone we got with the 6-inch figure. And I'm saying the 6-inch figure is good, but it's more about affordability. Of course, the 6-inch figure is great if you want to save some money and not spend so much on the figure. But the big one here is really the big shot. It is 40 Canadian dollars that I paid for it, and it's definitely worth every bang for my buck. This Kong is just as good as the new giant Godzilla Evolved. The bigger they are, the more fun they are to play with, and I can definitely say this is bigger and a child will have lots of fun on the carpet. Now I hope something like this will happen with Scar King as well, who is the last giant figure I've yet to review. So before I move on to that next video, let's wrap up this video by, of course, giving my score out of 10. What do I think of this giant Kong? Out of 10, I am going to easily give it a 9 out of 10. The only reason why it's not perfect, for the same reason as the giant Godzilla Evolved, and that is because of the screw holes. The screw holes have really downplayed this figure and it would have made it perfect. I just wish Playmates have found some solution to work their way around, because I get it, the screw holes are necessary for the articulation, but you can just find some way to cover it up. I think you can do the trick just fine. But other than that, this is a fantastic Kong figure, very strong Kong figure. Just like the giant Godzilla, the giant figures have been nothing but fantastic. Despite the screw holes, I am still very pleased with the result I got out of this figure. So, let me know in the comments if you agree with me or disagree, or what other Kong figures do you prefer, if not this one? I'm curious. But for now, that's it for this review. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out the Godzilla Evolved giant figure, just click on the link in the description or the end screen. It'll probably pop up somewhere over there. For now, we are done with the giant Kong. And of course, we have one more giant figure to review, and that is, of course, the giant Scar King. As for now, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. And we will see you in the next review. Bye for now.